Drink beer, it's good for you. I'm empty-handed and I'm feeling blue, and I'm gonna drink till the day that I die.
Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I shall be sharing my methods, recipe and brew day of my Hazelnut Cappuccino Brown Ale. The brown ale originates from England, and this style name was first used by London brewers back in the late 17th century. Back then this style was very lightly hopped and brewed using 100% brown malt. These days, thanks to the craft beer industry, the brown ale has been subject to exciting new flavours. Over the years I've seen reiterations from Indian brown ales, coffee brown ales, chocolate, latte, vanilla and so on. One of my favourites is the Hazelnut Cappuccino Brown Ale, hence this brew. Regular viewers of my channel will have often seen me using all sorts of different additions in brewing. These have ranged from baking chocolate, chili, all the way through to fruit. For this brew, and to get the results that I'm looking for, I will share a common commercial brewing technique in getting flavour that also has one huge advantage. The fact that you can adjust the flavourings to suit your own palate. Say hello to flavouring essences. Mostly you will find that these are marketed for the home distilling market, but they're also extremely useful in adding clean and controllable flavours into your home-brewed beer. You've been able to see the two that I'll be using for this particular brew on the screen for a while now, but these are also available in a huge amount of different varieties, ranging from common spirit styles like whiskey and rum, through to liqueur styles and coffees and chocolates and fruits. This is of course very interesting because this allows us to experiment with different types of essences in different types of beer. Okay, so back to this brew now, and I'll now share my recipe with you. You will find a copy of this recipe in the YouTube description, and I also save the recipe on the brew.grainfather.com website. As you can see, this is a recipe for 10 litres or 2.64 US gallons, but if you wish to resize it to an amount that suits you better, then you can also do that at the brew.grainfather.com website. You will also find all of my other recipes there for your convenience. Here's a quick look at the grain crush that I have for this particular brew. Please do note that it's certainly not coarse, but it's certainly not super fine to the point where I need a mash bag in my Grainfather. This is an important point, and I would urge all of you to look very closely at your grain crush to get the best results. So it's now time to start adding my grain to the strike water, and this must be done gradually, stirring as you go. As you get towards the end of this process, you will find that you have a porridge-like consistency within your mash, and this is exactly what you want. You don't want this to be too fluid, and you certainly don't want it to be too thick either. If you find that it's too thick, then simply deduct a little bit from your sparge volume and add that water in. It will help things no end. We have a very simple mash schedule for this particular brew. We start off with mash in at 67 degrees Celsius or 153 degrees Fahrenheit. This is done for 60 minutes, and then we mash out at 75 degrees C or 167 degrees Fahrenheit for just 10 minutes. I was really happy with the colour of this one. Beautiful. Moving on now to the sparge, and I always do this by hand. I find that the results this way are far superior to fly sparging. It's a bit more effort, I can see that, but it's certainly worth it. Onto the boil now, and we just have one hop addition in this brew, which is the bittering hop. During the boil it's important that every addition gets a good stirring in. The only other boil additions that I use were yeast nutrient and also Irish moss. In the background I've actually had my whirlpool and water aerator, sitting in a solution of PPW for some hours. I then transferred it into a further bucket which is full of hot water. This will rinse off the cleaning agents before it goes into some star sand for sanitization. After a fast but very furious whirlpool, I then started to chill down the wort in the counterflow chiller. This was then transferred into my conical fermenter using my well-known splashing method. I then used my new trusted little friend just to add some further oxygen into my wort. I have to say I'm really happy with how fast this works. It was certainly a big upgrade from the paint stirrer that I had before. After this I then added my yeast, which was shortly followed by my tilt hydrometer, which gave me the good news that I was exactly where I had planned to be in terms of my original gravity. I have to say I'm also extremely happy with the colour of this wort. And there it sat until my fermentation was over. Do not be alarmed by the rather high temperature displayed on the screen of my fermenter there. This is a fake yeast that I'm using for this one. The fun was far from over though, because obviously I got the chance to do a fair amount of yeast dumping along the way, which always raises a smile. And then after fermentation, you guessed it, it was time to start adding these essences. The method I would recommend that you use for this is simply as follows. You'll need a couple of containers. The first one is a medicine measuring cup, like you see here, and a larger measuring jug. It's important with both of these to get as many different graduation markings as you can. Obviously it's important to be as precise as possible here. Take a small amount of the beer and put that in the larger jug, and you'll then measure out small amounts of the essences and add it to the beer. The trick here is to add small amounts of the essences as you go. Personally, I prefer to add one at a time. Here I will use the cappuccino essence first, get that nice background going first, and then I will go in with the hazelnut and then just top it up to what I want. As you add these tiny amounts of essence, make sure you make a note on a piece of paper how much you've added. Because what we're going to do now, once you've found the amounts that you like in this smaller sample, is you need to then equate it up. So I've got an example here of how to do that, and to be quite honest, it's very simple maths. In this example we found that 1 milliliter of essence was good for 500 milliliters of beer. So some simple math here to turn it into litres, we'll then multiply it by 2. And then say you have a 10 litre batch, we'll then multiply that by 10 also. And that gives us our 10 litres for this batch. We then follow the same math with the essence, so 1 milliliter gets multiplied by 2 and then by 10, meaning that we'll need 20 milliliters in this 10 litre batch. Naturally this is just an example here. You'll need to measure your own in your own beer to find out exactly where your numbers will lie. But you can see the principle hopefully. This same principle can of course be applied to imperial measurements for those that are using those also. By using this method you'll find that you can't really ruin your entire batch of beer by simply using too much essence and creating a taste that you don't like. If you do find that the sample that you take you end up going too far, simply ditch it and grab a bit more beer out of your fermenter. This process shouldn't take you too long, and as I say, go gently on the amounts that you add and you should be good. So once you've equated the numbers that you need, they can then be added to your bottling bucket or your fermenter depending on how you're doing things, and you can then bottle or keg from there. If you're bottling and you're using a bottling bucket or you're kegging, then I would suggest that you add your essence to these vessels before you actually transfer the beer on top. This will give a nice easy mix. If like me you're using a fermenter that has a bottling function, then I would suggest adding the essence to the top and waiting a few hours just so that you have an even mix within before you start the bottling process. And that wraps up this video. So I do hope you found it both useful and interesting. I certainly enjoy preparing this brew and actually sharing this essences method with you. So if you did like this video, then please do go ahead and like it on YouTube. This really helps me out and allows the videos to be seen by a wider audience on YouTube. I've got a lot of videos in the pipeline for the future, so if you're interested in seeing what I've got coming up, then please subscribe for future content. If you have any questions on anything that I've covered in this video or in others, or anything to do with brewing in general, then please do not hesitate to get in touch. I'm more than happy to help. Until then, happy brewing!